Hi, welcome again to another edition of Plumline. My name is Bernie Lutchman, and thank you for joining me this beautiful day that the Lord hath made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. And as we always do, to start off our program, we do a few lighthearted items. A few of them we're a little section we call Did You Know, where we look at some historical facts and maybe some trivial items or some funny little things there. Anyway, for instance, did you know that a bank of Vernal, in Vernal, Utah, is the only bank in the world that was built from bricks sent through the mail? Can you imagine sending through a brick through mail? I heard about a brick through a window, but not through mail. And the cost of that, man, way back in 1919, the builders of this bank in Vernal, Utah, realized it was cheaper to send bricks through the United States Postal System, USPS, 7 bricks to a package than it was to ship them from Salt Lake City, which is in the same state. Now, they didn't have trucks and, they probably didn't have a rail system from Salt Lake to that little small town there, but when it sent it through the mail, wow. Did you know that marijuana was not illegal in the United States until October 1st, 1937, when Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Act? The total debate time in the House of Representatives was 90 seconds. This act did not actually ban the substance. It simply said that no one can sell the substance, which is illegal, except now in the state of Colorado, which voted to legalize it, without a license. Did you know that spinach is loaded with iron and makes you stronger? Look at what, actually, that's what Popeye says. I eat me spinach because I am Popeye the Sailor Man, and you get these big arms, and it's supposed to make you stronger than anybody else. So you had, including me when a little kid, eating these cans of spinach. Well, you know what? Did you know that spinach has no more iron than any other green leafy vegetable? This spinach misconception dates back to the 1950s when a food analyst made an error while calculating the iron in spinach. So, his decimal point was 1 place off, suggesting that spinach was 10 times more powerful than the average vegetables with iron, when it was just the same. So, sorry to burst your bubble there, Popeye fans. And just a few crazy thoughts. Anybody had these kind of thoughts? You know what an agnostic is? An agnostic is a person who an atheist who's a dishonest atheist, who can't bring himself to say he did not believe in God. He just say, well, I don't know. He's a moderate kind of thing, So when an agnostic dies, does he go to the great perhaps? Because, perhaps there's a God, perhaps there's not. We know that when you die, you either go to one or two places, heaven or the other place. And how about this one? Why do they call the period of time, like early in the morning, from 7 to 9, and from 4 to 5 or 6, where you have the slowest traffic, they call it the rush hour? And for instance, and why is there a road sign that says Braille Institute, next exit? And if you're an atheist, can you get insurance for acts of God? Yes, indeed. Today we're going to do a fun show on Christian movies. We all love movies, and Christian movies have been coming, they're coming fast and furious these days, because so many of them have been made, and some of them increasingly have a lot of well-known actors and actresses in them, and it's a great thing to behold. And the reason why I want to do a show on this is because it's an issue dear to my heart. I'm part of I have a chapter. The Hollywood Prayer Network is actually based in Hollywood, California, and I am the leader of the National Day of Prayer movement in Springfield, Illinois, which is for the state capital area, and we do a prayer service every year on the National Day of Prayer on the state capitol in Springfield, Illinois, on the first Thursday of May of every year since 2006. And we used to have this conference in Colorado Springs every year, and all the big prayer movements from around the country would come join us. One of them was the Hollywood Prayer Network, which is, as I said, based in Hollywood, California. It was started by a TV producer who found, well, people need prayer, including those people in Hollywood, because the kind of garbage that's coming out of Hollywood, well, in the past 50, 60 years, maybe 50 years, it's been horrible. So, and before that, we had quite a lot of family-friendly movies, a lot of big epic movies, you know, like Ben-Hur and the Ten Commandments and El Cid and that kind of thing. So started the Hollywood Prayer Network, and there are chapters all over the world. A friend of mine runs one in Italy. He's from Springfield. He moved to Italy to be a missionary over there. Missionary to Italy. And I have one in Chatham, and we also have a movie outreach at First Baptist Church in Chatham, where we once a month we show a Christian movie, and we have movie and munchies, and evangelize and bring people in the neighborhood who normally wouldn't go to church, but would come for a free movie and sometimes a free meal. So I thought maybe it would be fun to do a show on the history of Christian films and why and how it's becoming so popular, and what are some of the best movies that you can use as a resource for your own family entertainment, so we don't have to be giving money to some of these horrible, horrible movies that's coming out these days. Some of the garbage out there, vampires, Twilight, which is demonic inspired, Harry Potter, which is also demonic inspired. And those are some of the biggest movies in the past 10 years. So let's look at something wholesome, something good, something based on the Word of God. Did you know that the first PowerPoint presentation, the first slideshow, the first anything was by a Catholic priest? Yes, indeed, a Christian priest, a Catholic priest. Athanasius Kircher was a German priest back in the 1600s. He was also a scholar, and he liked to, tweak things, invent things, and he had a few different inventions that were really cool. One of them he perfected. It was started by another man, but Athanasius Kircher brought it up to par and started what became known as the magic lantern. The magic lantern is like it has a lot of candlelight, it's in a box, and these long lens that come out of a hole, and he created this long piece of wood with strips on it, and he'd move the strip in front of the candle, in front of a big long lens, and project it onto a wall. And they used that to teach the gospel of Christ in 1680. 1680, the first magic lantern was projected onto a sheet on a wall and became the first slideshow. 1680. And after that, people started using it. The church in Germany started using it to teach about Christ, and it started spreading. And then, let's say around 1897, there was Thomas Alva Edison. Now, the amazing thing was this: Edison was not a Christian. He refused to bow the knee to Christ, but while he was involved in the light bulb and all that kind of thing, and the record player and sound recording, and there is a sound recording of Edison, he also invented and made the first movie. And the first movie he made was one of 4 Passion plays that was made between 1897 and 1898. The Passion plays is based on the story of Jesus Christ last week on earth, where he was Palm Sunday, Good Friday, the cross, nailed to the cross, resurrection. That's the Passion play. That was the first movie. It was a short one by Edison, and it kind of kicked off. So right there we see first slideshow, first movie based on Christ. And over those years, people were thinking, this is a good way to teach the gospel. And not just those guys. In between Athanasius in 1680 and Edison in 1897, 1898, the great David Livingstone, the evangelist, the missionary who brought the gospel to Africa, used that magic lantern, that same magic lantern that we talked about that was created in 1680, to show the slides on the wall with the candle and the box and the lens. And the lens was pretty simple. So he used that to teach the gospel and to reach the natives in Africa for Jesus. He was doing this in the mid-1800s. So Christian film had been around longer than some of the stuff coming out of Hollywood, and any of the things coming out of Hollywood. Sure, it was still, and then in the 1890s with Edison, it became motion pictures. But as time went along, people started realizing that, you know, we got something here. In 1907, a man named a Hollywood producer, a secular Hollywood producer, made a 3-reel movie called on the Passion Play, and then it was called, I think it was called The Manger to the Cross, and he filmed it in Egypt, of all places. And then a British businessman, a wealthy guy named J. Arthur Rank, realized what was going on with these with The Manger to the Cross in 1907 with Adolf Zukor. Now Zukor is a pretty famous name in Hollywood. Now he too decided to make a movie to promote his Methodist faith. And he started a movie studio called Pinewood Studios. In the 1930s, there was a man in Illinois, right here in Illinois, named Charles Octavia Baptista. And he created his first film in 1939. It was a 5-minute film called The Story of a Fountain Pen, and he visualized the scripture. Now Baptista was a really solid Christian man, and he wanted nobody around him except other Christians. So he stayed in Illinois, and he grew his industry here. But at the same time, over in Ohio in 1938, there was an Episcopalian priest named James Frederick. He decided, well, you know, I can do this too. So he went out to Hollywood, and he hired secular Hollywood technicians from Disney. So he kind of associated himself with the Hollywood folks, and it took off from there. Then in the 1930s, Dr. Irwin Moon started using, Dr. Irwin Moon was a pastor who was very interested in science, and he would use illustrations, because, you know, we already had the magic lantern back in the 1600s, we had Livingston using it, then we had Edison with the motion picture. These guys were already perfecting the magic lantern. If you ever Google some of the pictures of magic lanterns, you'll see how it developed over the years, and it was pretty fancy. Now, Dr. Moon was interested in science, and I would say he had, in the 30s, had one of the first PowerPoint sermons, because he loved to show things while he's preaching, and people love that. You know, I love sermons where somebody might show a movie clip of somebody saying something in a powerful moment that will relate to the scriptures. There's nothing wrong with that. And that sort of kind of drives it home, especially for today's generation, let's say 30 and younger, because everybody's so visual these days. If you could get the gospel home by all means necessary, do it. So then, you know, as time went on, movies started getting more professional and more evangelistic. We had the Pacific Garden Mission do up in Chicago. They did a lot of salvation movies because they found out that that's a great way to reach Christ, people who need Christ. Moody Bible Institute did the same thing. And there was a common, should we say, a database, not an electronic database, but a central kind of library where people could have rented films via catalog. But catalogs were big back in the 40s and 50s, and churches grew that way, and they outgrew their ministry that way. In 1949, a man named Ken Anderson, who was the editor for Youth for Christ magazine, which was started by Billy Graham, formed a new studio called Gospel Films. And Billy Graham himself took this concept in the 1950s and made a lot of movies. In fact, Billy Graham's Evangelistic Association, BGEA, was at the time in Minnesota, and it was pumping out evangelistic movie like one or two a year. Some of the biggest movies are like, I think it was called The Hiding Place, the story of Corrie ten Boom, Something to Sing About, The Climb, and so on. And Billy Graham, they still make movies, and you can look at their website, Billy Graham. In fact, Ken Anderson, the Youth for Christ movement, made a movie. Their most famous movie was Pilgrim's Progress. And you know who was in that film? Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson was well known as for Star Wars and some other films, including Rob Roy. Well, he got a start in Christian film doing Pilgrim's Progress. And Anderson also made great movies like about Fanny Crosby and his notes and so on. So fast forward down to the 70s and the Jesus film. Now, the Jesus film is one of the biggest and well-known, best-known, and best-loved films in the world. Over 1 billion copies of the Jesus film been handed out, and people have seen it, and hundreds of thousands of people have made decisions for Christ based on the Jesus film. And there's a great story right here in Arkansas in this past year. There's a church in around Bentonville, Arkansas, where Walmart headquarters is, and Tyson Foods, and they have some people from the Marshall Islands there. They're wonderful people, but it's one of the few islands that didn't have the Jesus film. Well, this church called Cross Church decided to go out there and evangelize them, and bring them in, love them to Christ, and they had 8,000 Marshallese there from the Marshall Islands, which is only 45,000 people. They started a church there at Cross Church on Sunday afternoon. The people who made the Jesus film, who are called Campus Crusade for Christ, came over to Cross Church over in Bentonville, outside Bentonville, and got the Marshallese who were meeting there on Sunday afternoon to translate the film into Marshallese, went down to the Marshall Islands with the Jesus film in Marshallese language, and hundreds of people coming to Christ. So you see, Christian film had that power and outreach, because people just love entertainment, and if you can reach them with the gospel. Now, if you fast forward down to the past 15 years or so, and it has gotten really big. I mean, Christian film has gone from Elmer Gantry, which was making fun of preachers back in the 30s and 40s. It's gotten a lot better. The biggest Christian film of all time is still The Ten Commandments, which was made by Cecil B. DeMille in 1956. It has grossed over $2 billion. Now, $2 billion in that kind of a language there is different from $2 billion these days, because ticket prices these days are very expensive, $10 to see a movie now. Back then, it was 50 cents, a buck. So imagine the amount of people who saw The Ten Commandments. It's also sold quite a bit on DVD. I have a list here of the top 20 Christian movies of all times, and I got some of them to show you. The greatest Christian movie of all time is, of course, The Ten Commandments. But after that, The Passion of the Christ is the #1 modern movie. It pulled in $440 million worldwide so far. And a sequel has been planned called The Resurrection. Now, how the sequel has been done is really fascinating, because just like The Passion, where Mel Gibson went to the big mega churches and got support, not financial support, but because he had the money, he got support from the grassroots and telling them about the movie before he released it, so it had an immediate impact. This sequel to The Passion is called Resurrection. The producers are different from Mel Gibson. They're doing it differently. They're raising the funds from the ground up, and they're going to small groups, parachurches, small towns, instead of just the mega churches like Willow Creek or Saddleback. And it's going to be a fascinating movie when it comes out, because the resurrection has the power to reach in the ends of the earth, which will precede the second coming of Christ, because he's not going to come till the gospel gets out there. Now, so that's The Passion of the Christ, #1 movie, modern movie. Number 2, 3, and 4, The Chronicles of Narnia, which were written by C.S. Lewis. It was taken, Disney bought the rights to the movie from the C.S. Lewis estate, and they've stayed true to the word. They haven't messed with it like Hollywood usually does. The number 5 Christian movie of all time is The Nativity, which was done a few years ago. Number 6 actually is Fireproof. Fireproof is a production of the Sherwood Baptist Church in Albany, Georgia, and they've done some great movies. Fireproof, which was starring Kirk Cameron. Kirk Cameron was a growing pains actor, secular TV, got saved, and he's a fired up evangelist for Christ right now. He's got a great new movie out called Monumental. If you love America, if you love to see a family grow up in a great traditional environment, I exhort you to get the movie or rent it from the video store, or if you got Netflix, stream it in. Monumental is the name of it. So the number 6 movie is Fireproof. Number 7 is VeggieTales Jonah. VeggieTales is a great company. It was started right here in Illinois, actually, and before it moved to Tennessee, and then I think recently they sold out to Sony or somebody. But a lot of kids, man, in the past 20 years grew up with VeggieTales. What a wonderful way to teach the gospel and entertain kids at the same time, to grab them. And, you know, there's a better way. You don't have to watch the cartoons 24/7. Here's VeggieTales, and Jonah was number 7. And then a few years ago, TBN made One Night with the King. And then number 9 is actually VeggieTales, Pirates Who Can't Do Anything. And there were some end times movies in number 10. And then The End of Despair, which is number 11. That was based on the life of Jim Elliot, how he was killed. And then there's Facing the Giants and Courageous, 12 and 13. Also the product of Sherwood Baptist Church. I have a copy of Facing the Giants here. Here it is. It's a wonderful movie. These movies, Facing the Giants and Courageous, written by 2 associate pastors of Sherwood Baptist Church. And if you've seen Courageous, more people have seen Courageous than these. I exhort you to get these. Flywheel was the first one made by Sherwood, and then Facing the Giants. This was made for $5 million, and it took in 30 to 35 million. So get that. Number 14 in the Christian movies was Expelled, which was done tongue-in-cheek by Ben Stein. Number 15 was Megiddo, which is the Omega Code Part 2. And then number 16 was, I remember seeing that about 10 years ago, was a movie called Luther, which is the story of Martin Luther, the great reformer. That was 2003. Number 17, The Other Side of Heaven. And 18 was another phenomenon. It was called Left Behind. Left Behind was based on a book series by Dr. Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. I think it was over 20 books in the series. And those books sold millions and millions of books. And Cloud 10 Pictures in Canada decided to make picked up the series. And I think they made 3 or 4 of them, Left Behind 1, 2, and 3. And they were about to make the 4 when they had some legal problems, and it's shut down. And there's a word right now that Nicolas Cage is trying to revive it and do the whole series over. Kirk Cameron was in the original Left Behind, and they're pretty good movies. If you have Netflix, or you don't, if you go down to the local video store and rent the Left Behind movies. Number 19 of all time is China Cry, based on a persecuted Chinese saint called Nora Lamb. Number 20 was 7 Days in Utopia. I love that movie, 7 Days in Utopia. Robert Duvall is in that movie. It's a great movie on perseverance and how when your life falls apart, if you focus, if you see, focus on Christ, if you see the truth in Him, if you feel it in your heart and know by repentance, and if you trust in Him, and if you bury the past, you too can reach utopia and get on with the game of life. And it's a wonderful movie. It's a movie based on a golf game, but it's a story around a golfer who lost his game and went to see this older gentleman, Robert Duvall, who brought him along and just showed him how to handle life. So go see 7 Days in Utopia. And finally, I talked to you about a friend of mine. Well, not a friend of mine. He's an acquaintance who he and I email each other. He produces the Cristiano films. Rich Cristiano. He's got a new movie out called Amazing Love. Here it is, right here, Amazing Love. It's based on a book of Hosea, and it's a wonderful movie. It stars Sean Astin, who was Samwise Gamgee of Lord of the Rings, and his mother, Patty Duke, of the Patty Duke Show, isn't it? And in the past, he's made some wonderful films, he and his brother Dave. Time Changer is one of them. It came out 10 years ago. It's based on, I recommend this movie highly, Time Changer. He's also responsible for the Secrets of Jonathan Sperry, which is a wonderful movie on discipleship. Both Time Changer and Galvin MacLeod, actually both Time Changer and The Secrets of Jonathan Sperry stars Gavin MacLeod. If you know who Gavin MacLeod is, he was Captain Stubing of the Love Boat. And he's a good Christian man, born again, fired up believer, and I recommend that you see those movies. So there's a lot out there for your family to see, and they're all about Christ, and I hope you enjoy them. And just remember, Jesus loves you. Thank you for joining me. See you again next time on Plumb Line.